test. Hello, hello, everyone. We are about to start a mission spotlight over here at the Redwire booth. My name is Camille Bergen, otherwise known as the Galactic Gal. I'm a science communicator, space content creator, and I've been working with Redwire all week to share the stage, hand the stage over to these wonderful people. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Jake Moulton, who is the business development manager at VAST. And oh my gosh, Redwire. We were just talking about that. And you are going to talk about crossbow systems. Okay, is it on?
Thing. There we go. Yeah, thanks, Camille. And Max, welcome. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks, Jake. Thanks for asking.
Let's start. I'd like you to introduce yourself, kind of tell us a little bit about your background, how you ended up at Crossbow.
Sure. I am Max Vozoff. I'm Chief Technical Officer for Crossbow Systems. Well, I'm a recovering engineer, communications engineer. I worked in commercial comms for a long time. I went to the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for about 6 years. Then I joined a little unknown, unheard of company called SpaceX when they had 100 or so people. And there I did several things, but the main thing was I managed the development of the Dragon spacecraft from initial sketches on a whiteboard with Elon to the launch pad. So from there I consulted with a lot of technology companies and with investors. I worked for Paul Allen for a few years. I've worked in finance, which I did not enjoy so much. And the last 5 years I've been at Crossbow. I've known Jason Huntley, my boss, the CEO, I've known for over 15 years and with various hats on. So so 5 years now at Crossbow.
Awesome. And so, yeah, please tell us a little bit about Crossbow. There's been a lot, certainly over the last 12 months, a lot of exciting pieces of news. If you can tell us about Crossbow, what the last 12 months in particular have been like.
Sure. So Crossbow is about 150 people now, and that's double what we were 12 months ago. We have offices in Albuquerque, in Texas, in Luling, in Huntsville, in Northern California. We have R&D facilities in Socorro, which is just south of Albuquerque, and we are building a campus of production capability for solid rocket motors in Texas. The last 12 months, and I had to write this down because, we've doubled in size, but we've also had a second fully successful launch of one of our large 34-inch motors out of White Sands missile range with Redwire's help with all the structures. We have won and executed the first few milestones successfully of the conventional prompt strike long-range hypersonic weapon contract. We're supplying both first and second stage motors under that contract. We have won and begun execution of an AFRL contract called REARM that will be outfitting our production facility in Texas. Coupled with that, there was a StratFi award that doubles that initial award. I can now announce that we have been awarded the SM6 Mark 72 and Mark 104 motor developments. That will be kicking off very shortly. What else is in here? We now have multiple buildings on our campus in Texas. Last year we only had one, now we have 4 and 2 test pads operating regularly. We have a support contract with Naval Surface Warfare Center in Indian Head to redesign, refurbish their production facilities. 3 buildings are on contract and there's multiple more coming. And this week we got our AS9100 certification.
Oh, very exciting.
Which is not so exciting, but it's very important. So that's kind of Crossbow in a nutshell.
Yeah, well, congrats on the new awards, the new contracts, and I don't want to overlook, 2 successful launches in 2 attempts, so 2 for 2, which is very impressive, and a new launch that I think we'll talk about here in a couple months, a little bit later. I know Crossbow's primary mission is this novel rocket motor technology that you guys have, and was hoping maybe with the mock-ups that you brought that you could tell us a little bit about this technology, what makes it so innovative, and why you're going down this route.
Yeah, so I guess we call it our modular motors, and it's really an architecture more than a particular size or a particular motor. They're manufactured in cartridges, and it's very much like Lego. You you design and build pieces, and those pieces can be assembled not just into one motor or two motors. You can assemble it into a very large number of different types and sizes of motors. The one we've flown twice is actually similar to the one on the end here. That is a 1/10th scale. So that's 3.4 inches. The one we've flown is about 34 inches in diameter. The next one we'll be flying, actually the next one after the next one that we'll be flying is more like this one. This vehicle, which is actually the motor in that vehicle, we call XL3 or Bolt 3. That will push a 500-pound payload to Mach 5 and 500,000 feet as a very simple single-stage vehicle. But the modularity of these motors means that we're not just bringing one or two motors to market. We're bringing an entire family of motors, literally hundreds of possibilities, tailorable motors using common parts. So it's a mix and match. It's a Build-A-Bear motor. And that just allows us to accommodate a huge range of different needs in any given family, meaning any given diameter. And then more families, especially in line with the new contracts that we have, there'll be new families. And some of them will be in the small tactical scale, some of them will be in the 21-inch scale. And we are also looking at larger than 34-inch, significantly larger than 34-inch. So as we bring these online, we can test them initially with a single cartridge. It's a relatively small version. And then as we add cartridges, you get into first stage and some very large boosters. So it's kind of a different paradigm for solid rocket motor, for ordering solid rocket motors.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It screams modularity, and the different sizes are interesting as well. I did want to maybe touch on that a little bit more and talk specifically about the kind of different markets that you guys are addressing with the rocket motor technology. You mentioned the new kind of campus that you're standing up in the Austin area that, I mean, looks like you guys are gearing up for production level orders. So wanted to have you talk a little bit about that and the markets that you're addressing.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Crossbow's vision is to address the well-known, widely discussed deficiencies in the solid rocket motor supply chain to the defense industrial base. 40 years of consolidation has led us to where we are now with two suppliers, one of which has less than a quarter of the market. So we are determined. Our vision is to step in and be the first new supplier of solid rocket motors, credible supplier in over 30 years. And so that's a wide range of applications because solid motors are ubiquitous in defense. Everything from a shoulder-fired missile to a strategic missile in a Minuteman or a Trident are all solids. And so we can address all those markets and launch. You can get to space using these motors if it's a big enough vehicle. But we are actively pursuing everything from small tactical motors in the few-inch size up to well above 34-inch diameter. And so our customers currently are all defense and Department of Energy. And then I should mention as well that in markets, besides the motors, we're also launching our motors as part of our collaboration with Redwire and our partners at Los Alamos. We are building vehicles. Each time we field a new motor, we put fins and nose cone on it and we launch it to prove that it works in flight. And we have customers who want to fly payloads on those. And in doing so, we're really a system integrator, a launch system integrator and a launch service provider. We're not so much focused on going to orbit. We made a decision years ago not to play in that very crowded field of small launch. But the larger vehicles that we are planning will be orbit capable if there were a market for that.
Awesome. And I did want to talk a little bit more about the development process and kind of where you guys are at with that now. With the two successful launches that we've had, with the suborbital launch vehicle that's a little bit smaller than this. This is XL3, but XL2A and XL2B over the last 2 summers, have proven different aspects of your guys' motor technology. And wanted you to talk a little bit about the differences between those 2 launches and kind of where you guys are at in the development process with these test flights so far.
Yeah, so the the first launch, actually really the first two launches of XL2, and when you say smaller than that, that's about a 10th size. So it's a little shorter than that in aspect ratio, but it's much bigger than that model. The XL2 vehicles were really the first flight test of our large modular motor technology. So it was to prove that we could assemble this motor, we could design, build, assemble, and launch this motor, and in the vehicle itself. And we had excellent support from Redwire's Load Path group in Albuquerque in designing really all of the vehicle structures apart from the motor itself. And so they were key to us successfully executing those missions. It was also a very tactical timeline. We showed up with all the parts at the launch site 9 days before launch. In that time, we assembled the motor, we assembled the payload, we assembled the vehicle, we uploaded it, we did all the checks, and we launched it. And that timeline will get shorter going forward as well. And so the first time was very successful, especially from the vehicle perspective. The second one, the customer changed their payload a little bit, and we recovered the payload from the second one. And then the next one will be the same vehicle and the same motor, but it'll be a propellant grain that we've used our advanced manufacturing technology to create. So that'll be the same, but it proves a different piece of our strategy, which is advanced manufacturing of propellant. And then after that, we get into larger vehicles with a larger motor. That's what we call Bolt 3. That should be early 2025.
Yeah, and you talked a little bit about kind of the speed to launch from, getting on the launch site within, building everything up, ready to launch in 9 days. And that's kind of a perfect segue into tactically responsive launch, tactically responsive space. I love your perception on this. There's a lot of talk lately about TAC-RL, TAC-RS, with your guys' modular rocket motor technology with Redwire's suborbital launch vehicle structure. We have a very compelling solution for TAC-RL, TAC-RS. Wanted you to talk a little bit about that and your perspective on TAC-RL, TAC-RS, and how our team, fits into that paradigm.
Yeah, so responsive launch means different things to different people. And to traditional launch providers like SpaceX or ULA, it can mean shortening the FAA approval timeline from 12 months to 6 months. I mean, that's a big improvement. That's not really the game that we would play in. I think of it more as an operational tactical launch. So rather than 6 months, because if we lose a key asset on day one of a shooting war, 6 months is kind of too long. Tactical launch really is more like a tactical system in that it's something that could, for example, put things into orbit every 6 hours for 2 weeks, maybe from a different location every time. If we get to that sort of need, then this is the architecture, the gold standard architecture. It's something that you can assemble quickly, launch quickly with very minimal infrastructure on the ground, and it's something that you can have on a hot standby 20 minutes from launch for days, weeks, sitting there ready to launch if and when you're ready to launch it. And so if we get serious as a nation about having that capability, we're in, because this is the standard.
Yep, thank you. And in addition to responsive launch, I also wanted to talk about hypersonics. And maybe you can talk a little bit about Crossbow's vision, with the Crossbow Redwire team in the hypersonics realm.
Sure, and we are on the MACH-TB contract, which is sort of the test clearinghouse for the Army and Navy in developing and testing hypersonic systems. And we are actually the only supplier of solid rocket motors on that team. Kratos is on the team, but they're getting their motors from Aerojet or Northrop Grumman. So we're the only ones designing and building motors on that team. Certainly currently our customers for launch are all either Defense or Department of Energy, and they're all either on ballistic trajectories, meaning they're testing re-entry vehicles or technologies, or hypersonic depressed trajectories, testing hypersonics, or all the associated things that need to be tested and developed. And so that is a major application of especially our modular motors, because the thing about modularity is it allows you this great flexibility in test. Now, it may not be fine-tuned quite as much as a custom bespoke design for a particular purpose, particular program of record, for example. And if our customer needs program of record motor designs, bespoke designs, that's what we are doing for CPS. That's what we're doing for Mark 72 and 104. But for the test regimen especially, the flexibility that this modular architecture brings is incredibly powerful to be able to tweak a trajectory or be able to tweak or adjust to payload changes, payload mass changes, even weeks, even days before launch, simply by adjusting how you assemble the motor and some of the processes that you perform when you assemble the motor. So the modular motor architecture is particularly well suited to development testing, including the big effort right now in hypersonics.
Yeah, absolutely. Flexibility, modularity, that's what you guys are going for with the rocket motor. That same theme, we're going after with the launch vehicle structure. Final question for this mission spotlight. What's next? What are you guys looking at over the next 12 months?
Well, we should do this again in 12 months and compare what I say now to my last 12 months list. So we have a launch of the what we call CM1. So it's a repeat mission using our motor for our DIU customer. We will also be in the next 12 months launching Bolt 3. We will be continuing to execute on the contracts that I've mentioned, as well as multiple developments and static tests, probably not flight tests, but multiple development tests of tactical scale motors. And we will have initial production capability at our facilities in Texas. So that's a huge deal, because that facility, when we have all 3 manufacturing buildings online, one should be online this year, but that'll be 3 million pounds of propellant per year, which is a not insignificant contribution to national capacity. Not to mention all of the testing and all of the integration and the NDT and everything else that we're putting in place there as part of a manufacturing campus. So yeah, I expect to have, actually we have 4 buildings under construction right now, and there'll be at least 2 or 3 more starting before the end of this year. So the construction site is coming online progressively in phases, and that will begin before the end of this year.
Yeah, it's been a very exciting last 12 months, and we look forward to an even more exciting next 12 months, and appreciate the partnership and the collaboration, and look forward to where we're going.
Let me add that we really appreciate the relationship with Redwire. LoadPath has been an invaluable partner to us in standing up these vehicles, and these vehicles are only going to get bigger and more sophisticated, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Awesome. Likewise. Thanks, Max.
Thank you.
We'll turn it back over to Camille.
Thank you guys so much. That was incredible. Thank you so much for sharing your insights, and for everyone else attending. Our next event is the most anticipated event of the week. I'm not kidding. Star Wars versus Star Trek. We're debating it here at 3:30, and we also have a happy hour, so grab a beer, hang out with us, and enjoy this last panel of the day. Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thanks, bud. Thanks, Max. Good job.
Great job, y'all. Great job. That's correct.
So let's introduce the two teams here. So we have over here, Team Star Trek. We have Mike Gold. He is the Chief Growth Officer at Redwire, although for the next 45 minutes, he's the Chief Starfleet Officer of Redwire. He is, I think most people in the industry know that he is one of the biggest Star Trek fans around in the industry. His Star Trek fan is equaled almost by his fandom for the Red Sox. One causes more agony than the other, though, I think.
Star Trek has just as much chance of winning the World Series as the Red Sox do this year.
All right. And then joining Mike is AC Training. He is the chief technologist at NASA. He's been in various roles in industry in the past. It is not true, though, that you took the oath of office for NASA on the Starfleet Technical Manual.
That is not correct, no.
Okay. I heard a rumor about that, but that was apparently not true. So we have Camille Bergen for representing Team Star Wars. She is better known as the Galactic Gal. She is an engineer who has worked for a number of companies. She is now a STEM advocate, an educator. Woo! And joining Camille is Jessica Noble. Jessica is Chief Counsel at iSpace Technologies US. They're a company developing spacecraft to land on the moon, unless, of course, that's no moon.
It's a space station.
And serving as judge is someone who needs no introduction, but he's getting one anyway. It's Jim Bridenstine, former NASA administrator, and of course, I think as many people know, a big fan of Spaceballs. But this is Star Trek versus Star Wars, so you can't pick Spaceballs. That's completely out.
Everybody loves Spaceballs.
Judge, for the record, when I joined NASA, I did do a Spaceballs movie night at NASA headquarters, just to let you know.
All right.
Way to butter the judge up.
When we were at NASA, every night was Spaceballs night.
Okay.
1 point to Star Trek.
You know, Spaceballs wouldn't exist without Star Wars.
1 point to Star Wars.
All right. Okay, so with the points now even here, the way this is going to work, this is going to be sort of like, a typical debate. Remember that back in high school? Each side is going to give an opening statement. Then each side will provide a rebuttal. And then Judge Bridenstine will question both sides. At the end of that, each side will give a brief closing statement, and then the judge will render his decision. So with that, Mike, Team Star Trek, you've got your 5 minutes. And I'm going to keep time because I've heard people have been trying to play fast and loose on that, and that's not going to happen. So, Mike, your 5 minutes starts now.
Wait, hold on. Before we get started, as a judge, I've got to know, is the time like standard time on Earth or standard time on Alderaan? Because a couple minutes here is very different than a couple minutes there.
Yeah, we're not including any relativistic effects for this, so we're going to use standard Earth time for this, at least the standard Earth time that my iPhone keeps, which hopefully is pretty close.
Also, those Alderaan references are a little too soon. Some of us are still hurting.
All right. You ready, Mike?
I am ready to go.
All right.
I've been ready for 50 years to do this, Jeff. I've been preparing. There it is. And as you can see...
All right, hold on. Stop. Point to Star Wars because you guys are cheating with visual aids, which nobody told the Star Wars team about.
We just have more advanced technology, that's all.
You just really need extra things to help your point.
No, we have actual evidence to support our point.
We will not allow these proceedings to be rigged, which is what you are doing at this moment. Team Star Wars, 2 points.
I have to counter, in the words of Captain Kirk, I don't like to lose.
We never believe in a no-win scenario.
Well, you're down, so...
But not out, as always with Star Trek. So let's begin with, I've been a fan for quite a while, not new to this. My parents put me in a red shirt, so that tells you all you need to know about my childhood. Bad parents. So look, here at Redwire, we've done amazing things in terms of rollout solar arrays, powering the International Space Station. We conducted humanity's first planetary defense mission to hit an asteroid with those same arrays and a guidance system. Took incredible imagery. When we were back at NASA, the camera was the mission, and the Redwire cameras took amazing pictures of the moon on the journey of Artemis 1. But all of these operations began with a dream. The dream is what comes first and is the fuel for all of our ambitions and everything that we've created in the space world. And for myself, and I think so many others in this audience and the gentleman sitting next to me, our dream is Star Trek. Star Trek at a time when, in the Cold War, when we didn't even know if there was going to be a future, where we all lived in fear of the end of the world via nuclear disaster. Star Trek not only said that there is going to be a future, but that future will be glorious, that we will find a way to feed the sick, to heal the sick, to feed the poor. We'll find a way to come together in a federation that celebrates diversity and differences. And Star Trek drove that optimism at a time when it was so needed. And I believe that now we need Star Trek more than ever. And a great example of that was, even at a time we were in the Cold War with the Russians, in the first season of Star Trek, there was no Russian on Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry was criticized. Next thing you know, we got Chekhov. So it's a vision of a better future that I've gotten to live. So when I was with Bigelow Aerospace, we launched inflatable spacecraft using converted Russian nuclear missiles. Literally, swords into plowshares. We were reducing the world's nuclear arsenal one rocket at a time. And while in Star Trek, the launch took place from Montana, I said we launched the converted nuclear missile, but I was at least from Montana. So Art was imitating life there. And again, while we're in a very difficult time of war and strife, Star Trek says that we'll have a better future, and I believe that we can come together as humanity again. And this is just the example of that launch taking place. These, again, were weapons of war that we feared as children and then turned into peaceful tools for commerce, exploration, and development. And that's how Star Trek influences reality. It resulted in inflatable spacecraft that led to the Bigelow Expandable Activity Module, the Beam, which is still on the International Space Station today. Made good friends with the Russians, and when my son was born, the Russians photoshopped a picture that I had sent them, and they sent me this. I then had to explain to the Russians that, this is beautiful, thank you. I sent it to my friends at Johnson Space Center. They said, how come the Russians have baby spacesuits? What kind of animals are they that they're putting children in spacesuits? As opposed to Star Wars, Star Trek has inspired so many things in reality. The Artemis Accords comes from the vision of Star Trek. The idea that we can all come together, that space will unify us as a people, as humanity, that we'll be able to get by our petty differences, our petty bigotries, to build something bigger, something more beautiful. Additionally, no, thank you. The Artemis Accords came from the Kittimer Accords in Star Trek and inspired it. Also, the Space Shuttle Enterprise came from Star Trek. Star Trek has been such an important part of NASA. The first minority astronauts were recruited by Nichelle Nichols, who was at a Star Trek convention and said, why does the astronaut corps not look like me, to NASA people who were there. The NASA folks said, you think you can get qualified candidates? Go out and did it. And she did do that. So again, Star Trek has inspired the next generation, has inspired NASA to be better, to do better, because we want a future that our children can be proud of, that we can live in, that's peace, because we want, ultimately, more Star Trek and less Star Wars.
All right. Team Star Wars, you're up. 5 minutes.
I got you, girl.
I award them 10 points.
All right, there was a lot of talk about the wars aspect of Star Wars, and while I can certainly appreciate the points regarding the peaceful outlook for explained in Star Trek, the utopian vision of Star Trek. What we see in Star Wars is the human experience. What we see in Star Wars is a story that meets us where we are, and it shows us that no matter what the circumstances are that we find ourselves in, that there is always an option for better. we look at the original movies and the characters of Luke, Leia, Han, Chewbacca, R2-D2, C-3PO, individuals from across many different sectors of life who don't have anything in common, well, except for Luke and Leia, but we figure that out later. But who find each other, who find a common cause together, and who decide that they are not going to accept the situation that they find themselves in as being subject to a tyrannical regime, that they will bind together along with others who are willing to fight for the right thing, and that they are going to prevail over evil. This found family concept is found throughout Star Wars. We see it first in the originals. In the prequels, we see how that found family can come together. We see what happens when that found family is destroyed. And then we see, in the end, in the sequels, how it can come back together again. We see this in the animated series. I know a lot of folks don't look out into the rest of the Star Wars content, but if you take a look at the Clone Wars, I submit that this is content that is similar in depth and scope to Band of Brothers, and showing the relationships and the bonds that those who work together and suffer through conflict together forge in those times. In Star Wars Rebels, we see that found family concept again of those who have been left adrift and who find themselves in difficult circumstances and who lead the way for our heroes of the original Star Wars, who lay the foundation and the groundwork for them to be able to take up that baton and continue the fight for what is right. So while we don't have the utopian future in Star Wars, we have the notion that we can persevere and that good will persevere and that the Force will be with us always.
You still had another minute and a half if you really wanted it.
We don't need it all.
Oh. Ooh.
I'll take it.
All right, tough act to follow there. AC,
Okay.
you got your 5-minute rebuttal starting now.
All right. Here's my rebuttal on some of those points. It is about a family. You're correct. Your shows. It's about the Skywalker family. All those shows, all those movies, many of those movies are about the Skywalker family. Not your family, not my family, not his family. Star Trek about the human family. All of us, So yes, there are differences in their families and our families. One point. The other point about conflict and fighting an empire in terms of a rebellion. That's what you're all about. We are about the more difficult fight internally. If you recall Captain Kirk, in a particular classic series episode, we're humans. We're come from a line of barbarians. We can make a decision today. We will not kill today. And that's the tougher challenge, the internal challenge, to be better, to be bolder, and to make a better future. Fighting a rebellion that's out there in your face, yes, that's a tough challenge. But the internal challenge to make yourself a better human, to evolve yourself into the future, that's an even tougher challenge. That's what Star Trek is about.
That's it? All right. All right, Camille.
All right.
5 minutes starting now.
5 minutes, wow. I cannot top what Jessica said, but there is so much else to Star Wars, and we might use the full 5 minutes for this one. First of all, I think it's really important that Star Wars is cool. Like the technology, we're all engineers. Well, no, sorry, we're not all engineers. How many of us?
Lawyers.
Some of us are lawyers. Some of us are content creators. But we're all here in the aerospace industry, right? We're all here for technology, whatever format you engage with that in. And I think that Star Wars has the coolest technology. Lightsabers. Where are the kids with the lightsabers? They were around here somewhere. They were just here. Yeah, see, they're not walking around with whatever Star Trek has over there.
We got the lightsabers right
Oh,
there.
yeah, we got the lightsaber
lightsabers.
right there. See, okay, even the audience agrees.
Phaser versus lightsaber is a fast fight.
and pod racers, and even the Death Star is pretty cool, okay? It's pretty cool. We even have a moon that looks like one. I think that that is the universe telling us that Star Wars is better. And the Force is always with us. And I think that goes back to the human experience. Whatever spirituality, whatever you believe in, it's all connected by the Force. We're all connected, however that may be, because we're all humans. And I think that that is really beautiful.
You're it?
That's it.
All right. No one used all their 5 minutes. That's remarkable.
Mike did because he had a unfair PowerPoint.
Tactical edge.
Okay, so both sides have now presented their arguments. And now we hear from Judge Bridenstine, who's going to ask some questions of both sides. And after that, we'll do some closing remarks. Judge Bridenstine.
All right. To start, I heard a lot from this team about good overcoming evil, about good prospering and moving forward. In Star Trek, are there elements where it is good defeating evil, and can you share some of those, either AC or Mike?
So I think fundamentally, Star Trek, every episode of Star Trek is about good defeating evil, not only in terms of beating your enemies, but bringing them together with you. So for example, in Star Trek, it wasn't only a matter of defeating the Klingons, but defeating negative beliefs, of defeating poverty, of defeating bigotry, and convincing the other side that your way is the correct way. There was a wonderful episode of Deep Space Nine that Scott Pace and I often talk about, where it's the Ferengi, and he's giving another alien some root beer. And he says, you have to try it. And the alien said, oh, this is so sweet and sugary and cloying, it's terrible. And he's like, it's just like the Federation. And if you drink enough of it, it's just like the Federation. The United Federation, you begin to like it. The United Federation of Planets is an analog for the United States of America. It is a diverse polyglot of different people, different ideas coming together for the shared values of good, of freedom, of liberty. That's how Star Trek conquers. That's in every episode of Star Trek, how they come out. And let's talk about technology for a second. Star Trek has inspired technology.
That was not the question. So, okay, but I want an example of a time in Star Trek when it was necessary to kill Klingons. Did that ever happen?
It has been necessary to kill. That, yeah.
So would you argue that Star Trek is maybe more based on realism than this utopian society than you're leading on?
Star Trek is not about utopia. It's about striving for utopia. The people in Star Trek are not perfect.
Killing Klingons.
Hey, you've served. Sometimes force is necessary. Like, it's an unfortunate fact that even in Star Trek, while we explore, we have to be able to defend ourselves.
I want to be clear. It's very important to me that you recognize that as a fact.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. Part of Star Trek's mission is to create friendships, create diplomacy where we can, but defend when we have to, but only as a last resort. But when we were pushed, there is no one tougher than Starfleet to defend you and the values of the United Federation of Planets, and before us, the United States of America.
AC, do you have anything to add to this?
Yeah, I think it goes once again to the point of we're striving to be better. We do encounter in this universe different beings and creatures, some of which we have to negotiate with, communicate with, some we have to be tough with. It's a very tough universe. Star Trek makes that point. It is not an easy universe to go out there and explore and encounter these beings. That's why Captain Kirk had to be so bold and in some sense very confident of the Enterprise's abilities, because you don't know what's out there, but you have to negotiate from strength and peace and logic. And I would hearken to the precepts, the approaches of Captain Jean-Luc Picard, one of our top negotiators within the United Federation of Planets, and the way he would negotiate with Romulans, Klingons, and sometimes even the Borg.
So thank you for those responses. Mike, your time is done.
Did I look like I was going to say anything?
I saw you move that mic. I saw Mike move the mic. Okay, so on this side, it is absolutely true that there is a lot more realism in Star Wars. There's a lot more things blowing up. Entire planets get destroyed and millions of people get killed. And yet, Star Wars is also striving for a better end state where everybody can live peacefully. Can you guys share some of those types of examples there?
Sure, and I'll go back to maybe some of the history and lore from the timeline of Star Wars. Before the events that we see in A New Hope, there had been over a millennia of a peaceful republic that was guided by an elected Senate and that had Jedi as the protectors of peace. This had existed for thousands of years prior to the rise of Palpatine, Darth Sidious, and the machinations that he engaged in the Clone Wars to secure power. So there had always been an idea of what a free and representative democracy could look like within the galaxy that was dependent upon interplanetary relations, that was represented by a diverse body of different species in the Galactic Senate, and that supported free trade and economic prosperity. And so there was always this memory in the minds of those that then had to continue that fight on in the original Star Wars series of what could be and what they could return to. And you see they take the steps after the destruction of the second Death Star to set up a new republic. And I think it's also, something that we should take into account here as Americans, that, freedom is something that it is a tree that needs to be watered, lest there are those who come and uproot it. And that is, I think, one of the lessons that we see in Star Wars.
And how do they do that? They do that through love and through family and community. As you said at the beginning, it's the ultimate love story. It's an opera. It's a space opera, for crying out loud. Like, that's just really cool. And I think that it just brings people together, and everyone is just like, yes, if we love each other and we have family, and they might be distant, they might be across planets, they might be different species, they might be robots, it could be anything, but they're going back to that republic that they want to get back to.
Robots are people too. R2-D2, C-3PO,
BB-8,
also Chopper.
Okay, all right. So let's take for a second, I know Mike was interested in the technology here. Mike, I need your side to explain to me, why is the Starship Enterprise superior to the Millennium Falcon?
Star Wars is a fantasy. It's fun. It's
Again,
engaging.
you're not answering the question.
Your Honor, I'm getting to the answer. I'm getting the question. It's a fantasy, but it's not based in fact. The Starship Enterprise, like Star Trek itself, is about us. It's aspirational. It's about what we can achieve in reality.
So
the
I'm
medical
gonna repeat
devices.
the question, and
get there.
how is the Starship Enterprise superior to the Millennium Falcon?
Here's one way to me. For me, Star Trek was always about the team. On the bridge, on the ship. Star Wars, very much about the individual. Han and Chewbacca, a rebel and a rogue and his pet dog, basically,
Sir.
So there you go.
Those are fighting words.
But for me, Star Trek was about the diversity of people on the bridge, the team in engineering. A lot of us are engineers. We remember Scotty, remember Geordie LaForge. That inspired us to be engineers, because on that ship, there was no engineer in the Millennium Falcon. It was Chewbacca. Who knew what that was? But these archetypes and prototypes of engineering leaders that were respected officers in the ship, that was inspirational to us as we grew up and wanted to see reflections of our own technical interest on screen.
And the Enterprise is superior because it's something that we can achieve. It's something that we can do. These are all technologies that we want to go forward with warp drive, with phasers, and medical equipment that you see in hospitals today inspired by Star Trek. The flip phone, inspired by Star Trek. So these are all things that are influencing us today versus fantasy and Star Trek.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask the Star Wars team, how is the Millennium Falcon superior to the Starship Enterprise?
Well, first of all, I do want to say there might be somebody out there who looks like Chewbacca and needs to see that representation.
I don't know that was really encouraging of diversity. I don't like those comments about Chewbacca.
Brian Berger is right here. He is represented by Chewbacca.
Brian Berger and Chewbacca deserve a medal.
And Pete Canito, I don't know where he is. He's the CEO of Redwire. He's represented by Wolverine. All right, go ahead. Continue your line of reasoning.
So I do want to rebut a few points about the crew portion of Millennium Falcon. I mean, the Starship Enterprise. I mean, it's like comparing like a naval battleship to a Ford Explorer. Like it's
Yes,
not
point
a
taken.
fair
Yeah,
comparison.
I'll agree with that.
You're looking at a governmental quasi-military space vehicle versus a personal spacecraft. So I think for looking at the speed capabilities, the durability, the stealth of this personal spacecraft, I think all things considered that we're looking at an incredible technical achievement from the Millennium Falcon, as well as you do need a team, a pilot and a co-pilot, and Chewbacca was an incredibly capable co-pilot.
The
So
Millennium-
laugh it up, fuzzball.
The Millennium Falcon wouldn't last
Mike,
us.
again, it is not your turn. We're going to go to Camille. Do you have
Yeah.
something to add?
Man, I just can't keep following her. She's so good at this. But also, from that perspective, a personal spacecraft, we're all about commercialization right now, aren't we? Aren't we? Yeah? Not government owned and operated?
So what
about
she's
working
arguing,
together.
what she's
Together.
arguing is that Redwire as an institution is really leaning towards Star Wars. Is that correct?
I don't work at Redwire.
I mean, are they a commercial organization?
Who supports the International Space Station and the Gateway? Those are very much in the vision of Star Trek.
Well, time is running out.
Okay. All right. We're going to go to a final question. I know we're getting short on time, but there's so many to pick from here. Let's go with this. And I'm going to turn to the audience for this one. Leonard Nimoy or Harrison Ford? Let's start. Stop. Bop. You're in the audience. And I'm going to give the audience
I
its
don't know.
chance.
I'm gonna agree with her. Like that's a better comparison of Shatner versus Harrison Ford. I think
okay.
that's a better comparison.
Disregard. It's got to be Leonard Nimoy. Okay. From the audience, just by voice vote, Leonard Nimoy. From the audience, voice vote, Harrison Ford. I mean, that's not even close. All right, from the audience, we're gonna go William Shatner and Mark Hamill. From the audience, William Shatner. From the audience, Mark Hamill. I mean, that's pretty overwhelming. Would you like to respond to the audience's favoritism based on the cast?
William Shatner has actually been to space. Again, Star Trek reflecting reality rather than fantasy. Science versus science fiction. Hope versus despair. Peace versus war.
Enough said.
Harrison Ford is a pilot.
Oh,
William Shatner is an astronaut.
Barely. Oh, okay, sorry.
Okay, I think I have heard enough. And it's time for me to render a decision. Is that the next step in this process, or how does this work?
I think we should give each side 2 minutes to make a final closing argument. Maybe they'll sway you. So,
Okay, who do we start with?
Star Trek.
Again, Star Wars is a lot of fun. I love Star Wars as a child. John Williams is a genius, but it's fun. It's the dessert. Star Trek is something to strive for. Star Trek is something that the Artemis program takes inspiration from. It's something that NASA has taken inspiration from. It's something that we aspire to be. We asked the question about what's better, the Enterprise or the Millennium Falcon. In a fight, the Enterprise would probably take out the Millennium Falcon in seconds. But you know who wouldn't do that? Captain Kirk. Because we're always trying to make friends first and use violence as a last option. Star Trek is about becoming better than who we are, about building a better future. And while Star Trek is fun, I've dedicated my life to implementing the vision of Star Trek. I think it's more inspirational than any fantasy we could
Real
ever
quick,
have.
there needs to be some level of balance here. Would you argue that Yoda would want to make a fight before make peace? 'Cause
Absolutely not.
That's what he's insinuating. I just want
Trying
to
to
be
be
clear.
Yoda.
So if you're going to make these types of accusations,
I would say that wars is in the name. It is pretty explicit. AC?
Yeah, I think for me, Star Trek is really based upon the world we want to create in our lives. Infrastructure, transportation, and the evolution of the human condition. And I think we'll end on our side with a quote from the final episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, All Good Things. When Q talked to a Captain Jean-Luc Picard after this journey through multiple time periods. And he said the following. For that fraction of a second, you were open to options you never considered. That is the exploration that awaits you and awaits all of us. Not mapping stars and studying nebulae, but charting the unknowable possibilities of existence. And that to me is fundamentally why Star Trek resonates with me, resonates with you, and resonates with our future. Thank you.
All right, closing argument, Team Star Wars.
Do the fun one first. We got to get some fun in here, guys. It's all so serious about humanity's future and how bad things are in wars, and oh my goodness. Okay, lightsabers, superior. Pod racers, superior. Also, Star Wars has way more cute little things in it. Ewoks, BB-8, R2-D2.
Grogu.
Yeah, Rogu.
Tribbles.
Let's see. You can also experience it yourself. You can go to Tunisia and go to Tatooine. That's pretty cool. There's also the Star Wars Canyon in Death Valley. That's pretty cool. So I feel like it's a lot more immersive. I feel like the whole franchise is like bringing us into the fold, bringing us into this sci-fi, into this fantasy, if you will. But that's how dreams start, is the fantasy.
I mean, amazing. And also, I'm going to pick up on that, that aspect of it being science fantasy. It seems like that was being bandied about as, derogative, but there's something to science fantasy that also inspires all of us, that makes us lay awake at night and wonder, what if I could be the pilot of a spaceship? What if one day I can be a Jedi Master? And on that vein, let me talk a little bit about the Force and that aspect of Star Wars, because we've talked a lot about what is, that striving for that world that we want to live in. Well, it's the same thing with this concept of the Force. This is an energy, a field that binds us all. It is the reminder that all of us, no matter who we are, where we are from, we are all connected. And another thing that I want to say, since there was some quotes brought up from Star Trek, I do want to reference, and it's not one of the original characters from Star Wars, but one of the newest ones who has become near and dear to my heart, the character of Ahsoka Tano, a character who shows us that you can be confronted with difficult situations, that you can be confronted with choices, and that there are paths you can choose, and you can choose the correct path. But Ahsoka Tano would say, if I see someone in need, someone who needs help, I am going to do whatever I can to help them, no matter what. And to me, that is part of the ethos of Star Wars.
All right. That concludes the arguments, and now it is up to Judge Bridenstine to render a final decision, which will be the final word on this argument, at least within the jurisdiction of the Redwire booth, which closes at about 50 minutes. So,
Say when I get to decide.
whenever you're ready, Judge Bridenstine.
Star Wars.
Just so everybody knows that it's not only bragging rights that they were fighting for,
Oh my gosh.
but in fact, a real prize.
Oh my gosh.
That's for you,
Oh
girl.
my gosh. This is
Look how
amazing.
cool it is.
Guys,
You get the participation trophy.
here's your participation
Actually,
trophy,
I
Mike.
do want to say thank you so much to our colleagues for their arguments on Star Trek, because all of them are valid. Star Trek is aspirational. It does inspire us, and there's a lot of greatness to Star Trek. So thank you both.
I think we can all agree, as long as it has Star in it, Battlestar Galactica, Star Wars, Star Trek. we're all
Stargate.
happy. Stargate.
Stargate.
Thank you.
Spaceballs,
And,
yeah,
and,
Spaceballs.
and Spaceballs.
And so I'm expecting next year we will have Spaceballs versus Galaxy Quest here. Yes. Someone take a note
See
of
you
that.
back next year.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Rigged election.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Space News.